Legends, welcome back to another Ruck infringement team preview. This week's team preview is none other than the Sydney Roosters, repping the 1997 City 4 jersey right here. To join me on this journey tonight is friend of the show, very good mate of mine, Doug Allen. Doug, how you been?
Well, good, thanks, Joe. Long time, but yeah, been good.
Very long time, mate. Great to have you back. Repping your Sharks jersey tonight, which we absolutely love. Of course, if you are listening, don't forget to check us out on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, and of course, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Head over to our YouTube as well and hit the like and subscribe button there, where you'll find a few of our team previews to date so far. All right, let's get into a bit of Sydney Roosters team preview now. The 2025 season for the Roosters is one that is touted to not go as well as many think. A lot of losses, one game, but the losses far outweigh the gains in this team. So the gains is Chad Townsend from the North Queensland Cowboys. He's been around a bit. Chatty is a premiership winner with the Sharks, of course, in 2016. Was at the Wars and the Cowboys before joining the Roosters. Now, I really actually like this signing. He brings a lot of experience. He's won a premiership. He knows what it takes to win a premiership. And I think it's actually not a bad signing. Of course, Sammy Walker injured for the first 10 weeks of the season. But let's talk about the losses. Now, big losses, of course, Joseph Suaalii gone to the Waratahs and the Wallabies in rugby union. Joseph Manu, he went over to Japanese rugby, but is rumoured to be coming back very shortly, but we'll talk about that soon. Jared Waerea-Hargreaves to the Super League, Luke Keary to the Super League, Satili Tupanua to the Bulldogs, Michael Jennings retired, Lewis Murphy returning back to the Super League, and of course Dylan Napa retiring. Now, some big names there. And then when you incorporate the injuries as well, Walker gone for 10 weeks, Cheese gone for about 15 with the ACL and the MCL injuries. It's going to be a rough season, but the Roosters faithful in me says that we'll still be there come September. We're top 8 and we'll be raring to go. But, mate, let's jump into a bit of our predicted lineups. Now, at the back, doesn't really change too much. James Tedesco, he'll be the fullback. He'll be the captain. He'd be your fullback too, I assume.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no change there.
No, not at all. I think Teddy's got his work cut out for him this year. With a young half in Sandon Smith, I think Teddy's got a lot of extra ball playing ability that he needs to channel this season. So it'll be interesting to see. With the wingers, speaks for itself. Daniel Tupou, top try scorer at the club, and then Dom Young on the other side. And I think that's how it's going to be for most of the season. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. In the centres, it's a bit of a three-way battle at the moment. There can only be two spots. Now, we've got Billy Smith, who is back from injury. We know what a player Billy Smith is, but the injuries have haunted his career the past few seasons. Robert Toya, who played in the trials Sunday night and was absolutely fantastic and has been touted as a future player of this club, and he's going to be really good. I think he may jag a spot. And then, of course, Mark Nwanga-Nitawase. I've been practicing. Very good. But at the moment, I'm leaning towards Marky Mark and Robert Toya as my centres. Do you have them, or do you think Billy Smith might be a bit of a chance?
Oh look, I've definitely got Mark. However the fuck you say it, I don't know. Yep. But look, Billy Smith might make a comeback. I'll just see how this injury goes, and I think Billy Smith is a pretty good pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there and he's done the job.
Yeah.
And so I think they want to go with that experience. But Robert Toya is a young kid who's coming through who looks really good. But can he handle first grade? That's going to be the big issue. It's a big step up from New South Wales Cup. Let's jump into the halves. Of course, New Look halves pairing for the Chooks this year. Sandon Smith at 6 and, of course, Chatty Townsend at 7. Now, Sandon, he played a few games at halfback to finish the year last year when Sammy Walker went down. Didn't look too bad. And he's long been touted by the club as a future star for the Roosters. Of course, Central Coast boy, Sandon, and, you know, he grew up in our neck of the woods, in our areas, so it was fantastic down there. But it'll be interesting to see if he can take this job full-time. Of course, he played a bit of backup hooker to Brendan Smith in the season as well. Mate, no one really else coming through. I think they're the halves for at least the first 10 weeks.
Yeah, no, it seems pretty solid.
Yeah, absolutely. The knock on Chad Townsend, I don't really understand from people. A lot of people saying, you know, Chad's a has-been, all this sort of stuff. He brings experience. And I think for a side like this with the Roosters, with them lacking so many players, experience is just what they needed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you know, it shows in previous seasons too with the Roosters. They do really well with
Mm,
experienced players. They
yeah,
need those experienced players in their side to, you know, guide them, and that's how the Roosters, you know, strive throughout their season. So I think Chad, like, I don't know why everyone's hating on it. I don't know
yeah.
why they're giving him so much grief about it. I think it's a good move, and you know, it'll surprise a lot of haters, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's move into the front row. Of course, the big change, no Warrior Hargreaves, which we would have seen as a instant lock in this team in the front row in previous seasons. But with him gone, there's been a debate as who will start in the front row. Of course, Lindsay Collins on one side, he's a lock straight in there as well, and Connor Watson at 9. But the number 8 jersey is an interesting one. Now, Spencer Leniu is the front runner at the moment, but I really like Spencer off the bench. And I think the impact he has off the bench far outweighs him starting. And we saw it in Origin. In Origin, when he came off the bench, he was so strong for New South Wales. And I think I, I, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing him playing off the bench. It doesn't mean you're a bad player. It just means that you're an impact player. And I think that's the sort of uh, thing we need to see. And I hope Robbo keeps that going for Spencer this year. So my pick for number 8 is actually Nafahu White, who has been on the bench for the past couple of seasons. Actually played, I heard, 24 games last season, which was really good for Nafahu White. Can play a bit of lock, can play a bit of front row, and can play on the bench as well. Mate, do you think Nafahu will get that spot, or do you think Spencer will get the first crack?
Oh, look, with the experience in Spencer, he might get the first crack, but as like you said, you know, Spencer plays really well off the bench. So I
Yeah.
guess it comes down to Robbo's decision on how he's going to play that.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, Spencer, he wants to be a starting front rower. And look, he's a fantastic player, but I just think him coming on with 20 minutes to go in the first half with tired forwards, he'll just run straight through them. So I
Yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
what we need. That's what we need. Keep him on the bench and have that effect. Now, of course, our hooker is Connor Watson, who played Origin last year, and he'll be there for hopefully the majority of the season. He played in the Indigenous game the other night, looked really, really good. A little injury scare at the end, but nothing too major there. And then, of course, Lindsay Collins at number 10, who is another representative player who people are absolutely sleeping on, forgetting that we have a representative front rower for Australia and Queensland in our side. Then we move into the second row, of course, Natty Butcher and Angus Crichton for me, I think will be there. Although Victor Radley played a lot of second row last year, they actually moved him out of lock, but that's because they had Watson playing lock and they had Cheese playing 9. So
Mm.
whether they go down the route, because I think Radley was good in the second row because he wasn't getting sin binned in the second row, whereas at lock he's just swinging his arm. So
Yeah.
playing at lock, I think he's a fantastic lock, and I think he's a really good ball player. And I think this season the Roosters need him back at lock. I think he's matured a lot now that he's had a kid. I think he's really matured into himself, and I think him back at lock could be the best thing for us actually to get that ball playing going and just run those lines. I think he'll be a bit better mentally as well. But I can see the argument for him at second row. But Angus Crichton, he's a lock. He's straight up in the number 11 jersey. He'll be there. And then it's just between Natty Butcher and Victor Radley. I'm leaning towards Butcher at the moment because I want to have Radley at 13. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna have to agree with you, mate. I think yeah, you're spot on there with Radley and you know yeah, your thoughts on his position in the team.
Yeah, I think we need that. I think it, the only way I see him playing second row is if we start Spencer, we move Nafahu White to lock, and then we play Radley at second row, and
Yeah.
Butcher plays off the bench. But I just don't know if that's the play to start off the season, but it definitely could happen later on.
Oh yeah, look, you probably need those few like buffer rounds, like work out the
Yeah,
team, work out what works. But I think yeah, you're on the money with that one.
yeah, I think so too. Of course, our lock will be Victor Radley. No one really chasing his position there. Let's look at the bench makeup now. Interesting one this year for the Roosters. With Brendan Smith out, we don't have a backup hooker. So Connor Watson, I think, is going to be playing big minutes this year, and we'll talk about his prospects in fantasy coming up because it's very, very juicy. But 14 is going to be an interesting position because we do have Zach Docker-Clay, who can play a little bit of hooker and has been re-signed by the club. But I don't know if he gets a start. We do have uh, Moriarty, who is a young hooker coming through the grades as well, who could get a first crack. But I just don't know if Robbo's going to go for that or whether he's just going to look at a four bench forward sort of makeup. So on my bench, I've got Sia Wong, who I think has been playing really well and actually has been playing at lock in the trials. I mean, do with that what you will,
Mm.
but it'd be really interesting to see if Wong maybe gets a start at lock and they play Radley in second row. So that could be interesting too. If that does happen, then that Butcher's on the bench. But let's go with what I've said so far. We'll go Wong on the bench, Egan Butcher on the bench, of course, Spencer for me, and then young guy coming through, Blake Steep. Now, he played in the Indigenous team the other night. This guy, Doug, I'll tell you, he is a future captain of this club. He
Yeah,
is
right.
he is a fantastic player, very Boyd Cordner like.
Yep.
Just even his build and his mold, he looks like Cordner as well.
Blake Cordner like even to captain the Blues, you reckon, mate?
Yeah, mate. Hey, could definitely down the track. I mean, he's only 19 at the moment, so very
Yeah.
fresh. But
Few years.
yeah, he is a good player, and he's definitely one to watch. And I think he's going to play a lot of first grade this season.
Yeah,
So I've
okay.
got him in my 17 as well. I think that will be the bench makeup. There are a few players coming through. DeSale, he played in the game last night. He's a big front rower. The Va'a brothers as well. They're massive. Um, One of the Vaha brothers, I found out last night, actually boxed Paul Gowan. He sparred him before his fight, one of his early fights early on,
Yeah, okay.
and sparred him really well. And this kid was only like 17 when he sparred Gowan. So the kid's build, he can play too. So we've got some depth, but I think depth is going to be our biggest issue because there's not much in that starting 30 coming through that make me go, oh yeah, like jump with excitement. So I think injuries are going to be our key this year. If we can limit the injuries, I think we'll be okay. If we get
Yeah.
a couple of injuries to key personnel, I think it might be end of season. But that's it for our predicted 1 to 17s. Now, before we get into fantasy, I want to talk a bit about Joey Manu. Now, it's rumored lately that Joey Manu is not having a great time in Japanese rugby. Go figure. And he's actually struggling over there with the game and with the concept. Now, their season is a lot shorter. So their season actually finishes in May, meaning he is allowed to come back and play for the Roosters this season. So the Roosters, the deadline for the NRL for making trades and transfers is the 30th of June. Meaning, if he was to come back in May and the Roosters offered him a contract in June, he could accept that. And that was sort of the contract heading into this Japanese rugby was it was only a 6-month contract, and he could come back and play. And from all reports, the Roosters have left a roster spot open, so they've got 29 on the books so far. They've left a roster spot open for Joey Manu, which would be exciting. If he was back mid-season, that would really, really help. It would be sad for the likes of Billy Smith or Rob Toyo because one of them would
Mm.
instantly miss out. But yeah, mate, we know what Manu's produced in the past few seasons. It'd be great to see him back in the NRL.
Oh, look, that would be a fantastic outcome for the Roosters if that was to happen. Because yeah, Marnie knows the team, knows the coach, knows the
Yeah,
play. It'd be a fantastic in for you guys.
absolutely. He's won a comp as well, 2019. But let's talk about NRL fantasy now. Of course, if you haven't joined, we will throw our links in the description. We do have Supercoach and NRL fantasy running as well. Two great comps there with some SC rings, championship rings up for grabs. We did a video on that recently. They look incredible. There is one for Supercoach, one for fantasy. If you like the whole championship ring idea, then get involved in our comps because they are very, very good quality, and you want to win one. But let's go through. Sorry, a few fantasy players. Now I'm just getting up my fantasy players here, but there's a few I want to talk about who have been fantasy relevant in the past, may still be this year. But the first one I want to talk about is James Tedesco. Now, 737K, a fantasy gun, has been in the past, still is. However, if it was me, I wouldn't personally be starting with him. I think at 737K, he's probably going to lose a bit of money because his break even is quite high. So his break even, I think, was close to 100, meaning he has to score 100 every week to make money. So it's probably not going to happen instantly. The Roosters are notoriously slow starters, meaning that James Tedesco is definitely one that you want to get over the origin period. He's probably not going to play for New South Wales anymore. and he is the perfect fullback to have during that period when the Roosters have, some games coming up that might be difficult for them. He's going to do a lot of work. So for me, James Tedesco is one to hold back, wait for the origin period. The next one is Angus Crichton. Now, another premium option. Of course, he's in the second row, the edge position, 728K. If you start with Crichton, I wouldn't be mad. However, again, there are better options to go with to start with. I think Crichton's a perfect one for the run home. Your rounds 18 to 27. I think he's perfect there because the Roosters have finished their buys by that point. Origin's over, and he'll just get you those points that you need at the back end of the season. Wouldn't start with him. One, though, that I'm very high on, Connor Watson. 663K. You can play him in the mids. Now, he's likely to get the starting hooker role, and he's likely to play 80 minutes, meaning he is definitely one that you want to have in your team because if he not only is he going to have the mid, but he's going to have the hooker duel as well. So once he plays hooker in round one, he'll get the hooker duel straight away, meaning you can play him at hooker or in the mid as well, which is a fantastic problem to have in your team. So Connor Watson is definitely one in my team. And I think he's one that you should definitely consider if you don't have him yet. We'll go down a little bit. Now, one that's been talked about, your mate, Marky Mark. Now, 350K, you can play him at wing fullback. Interesting if he lands the centre role because he'll probably get that duel as well, wing fullback centre, which again, very juicy at 350K. He's a good cheap option. And if he gets that starting role,
Yeah, well, when you said 350K, I thought the same thing. I was like, that's a real good option.
That's what you want. And I think you don't want to spend big in your centres to start with. Your centres, you want to have them cheap. Make sure they're making some cash. And then, towards the run home, that's when you get your premium centres. You want to work out who it is. It's always a hard one to pick in your centres as well. So once he gets the duel, a great option there. But even in your wing fullback or on your bench, he's a fantastic option at 350K. He's currently in my team. If we go down a little bit more, one that I want to talk about that hasn't been talked about a lot is Siwa Wong. Now, as I spoke on, he actually played 13 in the trial. Now, if he was to land a lock role, he would also grab dual position. He is named at edge at the moment in fantasy, doesn't have the mid dual. But if he does get the mid dual, 344K, if he starts, he's going to make you some cash. And I think he is a juicy option. Not one in my team so far, but I think just keep an eye on him. Look out for team list Tuesday, see if he gets named and give it a couple of weeks. And then if he does, jump on. The other one that people have been really high on this year is Nafahu White. Now, he does have the mid-edge duel, 415K. If he gets a start in the front row, I'm tempted to bring him in. I think he has better stats at lock, but I think in the front row, if he's starting, I think at 415K, you're not going to break the bank bringing him in, and he's probably going to get you, 40, 50 points a game, which is not too bad. So he's definitely one to look at. Now, one that everyone should have in their team, Sandon Smith. 250K, cheap option. He's going to be the starting 5'8" for at least the first 10 weeks. Which gives you plenty of time to make money. He's gonna go upwards of 300K. I reckon he'll be about 550, 600K by the time Sam Walker comes back, which is an easy pivot to another premium halfback. So everyone, I think Sandon Smith should almost be 100% owned. Let's have a look. He's only 42% owned at the moment, so not even half the people in fantasy have him in their team. And I'm just saying, if you don't, everyone should.
Because he speaks, mate. Get on it.
It doesn't even matter if he makes 15, 20 points. His break even is so low. It's in the minuses. So if he does make you 15, 20 points, he's still going to gain cash. So he's still going to go up in price, so I think he's definitely one that everyone should have in their team. And of course, the last one, Rob Toya. Now, we spoke on how good he was earlier. Now, 230K in the center position. If he does get a start, everyone should have him as well. He's already owned by 35.3% of people, which I think is quite high for Rob Toya. 230K, he's almost my starting centre if he gets picked. I think you got to have him in, another fantastic option. But apart from that, not really anyone really to talk about with the Roosters. I think a couple of avoids that people need to stay away from. Of course, early on, Tedesco and Crichton, but they're premium options for your run home. Victor Radley. Now, for some reason, every year I see a lot of people who play fantasy pick Victor Radley. and I'm not 100% sure why. He's actually only 2.9% owned this year, which is good, but he's still 2.9% owned. At 598K mid-edge dual, there are so many more players you can get cheaper than that who are going to give you more output. I love Vic Radley as a player, but as a fantasy option, he just doesn't convert the points into fantasy scoring. Now, definitely don't go there. Don't buy Vic Radley unless he has his best try scoring year ever, which the Roosters are not tipped to be scoring many this season with a new halves pairing. I would thoroughly avoid. The other one's Chad Townsend. Now, he is cheap, 450K at halfback. He's the starting halfback for the first 10 weeks at least. I would just be avoiding just because you just don't know. I mean, Chad's probably not going to churn out the numbers you want.
Well,
He's
he's a
not.
very hit and miss player, isn't he? Like,
He is, and that doesn't relate well to fantasy. And I think if you've got Sand on at 250K, you don't need to
mm,
bring Chad in at 450K. You've got a halfback that's 250K cheaper, and he's going to make you money. So,
yeah,
look,
absolutely.
I would steer clear from Townsend. But look, that's it for our fantasy and Supercoach chat tonight. Of course, if you are looking to play, please, our codes are in the description. Of course, we have a Supercoach comp running and a fantasy comp running. There's also fantasy draft as well. So if you're interested in NRL fantasy draft, DM the Ruck and Fringe podcast, and I will give you those details. All right, mate. Let's have a little bit of a talk about the Roosters heading into 2025. Now, as I spoke before, a lot of talent gone. However, I'm I'm not believing all the hype, and I actually really love that people are writing us off early because usually people aren't writing the Roosters off this early. Usually they're saying, "Oh, they're going to be top four." You know, they'll definitely be in the eight. But everyone has written us off this year, and I think it's the perfect formula for Trent Robinson to get the boys going. Uh, Look, we've lost a lot of players. However, you think of the talent we still have across the board. James Tedesco, former New South Wales captain, former Australian captain, uh, absolute star, 1 point off a Dally M last season. He almost
Mm,
won the Dally M.
yep.
Jerome Hughes beat him by a point. Daniel Tupou, top try scorer at the club. Dom Young, we know how fast he is, can find the try
Mm-hmm,
line from anywhere.
mm-hmm,
Marky Mark played one game last season and looked incredible. Rob Toyer's touted as the next big thing. Billy Smith, he's been there and done it before. Then you move into the halves. Yes, Sandon is a bit fresh, and it might take him a few games to gel. But Chad Townsend, as we spoke before, is the experience in this team.
yep.
Moving to the front row, Spencer's an Origin player, Watson's an Origin player, Collins is an Origin player. So we've got three
Mm-hmm,
rep forwards in the front row. In our second row, we've got another Origin player, an Australian player in Angus Crichton,
yep.
and who was arguably the best second rower last season, better than Liam Martin, and at least you could tell from the Storm he was fantastic, Crichton. And then Nat Butcher, who's been there for years now, and just he's a tackling machine. He does what we know best. Vic Radley, we know how good Vic Radley was. He was in the top five locks about 3 years ago. So if he can get back to that, that'd be incredible as well. And then on the bench, if we do start with Nafahu White, we've got Spencer, obviously an Origin player. Siwa Wong has played for his country, and then that's sort of where it stops. But so lots of talent across the board. So for me, I don't really understand the knock on the Roosters for this season. Can you make any sense of it, mate?
No, not at all, mate. Like, and it doesn't just stem with it, like from the Roosters as well. It
Mm,
stems across the whole board too. I don't
yeah.
think you can write off any team just even before like pre-season's finished. You need to, if you've got new wins, you've got outs, you've
Mm,
got a new team dynamic and all that sort of stuff. Like you need time for your team to gel, to find their way. You could have, say, the Sharks, for instance, they could win their first 7 games and then lose the next
that's
20.
it.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, um, it just depends on how all the other teams go with, like I said, like if the Sharks win their first 7, those 7 teams that they've defeated in those first 7 weeks, they could gel, find their groove, and come out and smash the Sharks and put 50 points on them. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so hard to try and knock a team, whether it's the Sharks, the Roosters, the Panthers. Like, yeah, the Panthers, say for instance, they've had a lot of outs this year. They haven't got the same squad that they've got, that they've won, the premiership is however many times they have, but they could come out and do it again.
Mm.
Like no one knows, and I think it's ludicrous to try and knock a team before you've seen how the team plays. To be
Yeah,
honest,
it's crazy, isn't it? I think it comes down to that word we use a lot, culture.
Oh yeah,
And we see that with Panthers. They've won 4 in a row. Everyone goes, well, they've lost Luai, Fisher Harris this year to Ruva. Surely they can't do it again. But the culture is so strong.
exactly
And,
right.
if the culture is strong, who's to say that they're not going to get there again? You never know. And I think the same with the Roosters.
And the Roosters, yeah, well,
Culture's strong at that club.
that's right. Yeah, the Roosters culture is so strong that it doesn't matter who's out with injury, who's gone to a new club, who's retired, and who comes in. It's the fact that you've got that culture behind you. You've got the same coach. He's got the same coaching staff. He's got the same idea that he wants his team to, the way he wants his team to play the game. I just, I don't understand the knocking of the Roosters this year at
And
all.
for me, the big thing is that everyone's forgetting Sam Walker's due back around between round 10 and round 12.
Yeah,
That's not that long in the season, about halfway through. If we can string a few games, a few wins in that time, we're in great stead. Sam Walker comes back, he kicks us to victory every game. So
absolutely.
for me, I can understand, people saying, "Oh yeah, Manu's gone and Suoli, he's gone." I get that. A lot of people didn't like Hargraves. Yes, he was our forward leader and he was fantastic. Kiri, I think Kiri was past it anyway. He was looking a bit old in the teeth. I know he's got that experience, but I think Chad just brings that anyway. And then the only other big one is Tupanua. Oh, Terrell May, sorry, we missed before as well, who has joined
Yeah,
the Tigers. But Tupanua, he was fantastic off the bench. But we've still got representative players. We've got a fantastic squad. For me, I'm going to have the Roosters in that 5 to 8 territory
yeah.
this season. I've still got them in the top 8. I think it'll be the 5 to 8 territory. As much as I'd love to say top 2, I do need to think objectively this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate, where would you have them?
Look, I'm going to be a bit more specific. I'm going to sit them right at 6.
Nice,
They're going to
nice.
finish 6 in the
I like
regular
it.
round.
I like it. No one's ever won the comp from outside the top 4 until 2025. So
Well, it might be your
look,
year.
let's hope, mate. Let's hope. But yeah, talking on that, it's going to be a fantastic season. Hopefully, the Roosters can get there. Again, it's only preseason. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Before we finish up, we're going to talk a dynamite player for 2025, a player that we think is going to absolutely explode this year for the Roosters. Now, you mentioned him to me off air. Do you want to tell everyone who your dynamite player is for 2025?
I'm going to have to go with Marky Mark, mate. I think he's going to be a gun player for you guys this season.
Yeah.
Not much more to say on that. I think he's going to have a really good season with the Roosters.
Yeah, mate, it's a fantastic shout. I can see it. He's a big body too. Big body, got lots of speed. I think he's in for a big year. I really like it, mate. For me, I mentioned Blake Steep before. I won't give him a run again, but I'm actually going to go Nafahu White. Now, I've been talking about this guy a lot. I think he'll play in the front row this year. I think White's going to go to a whole new level. Last year, he actually made his debut for New Zealand as well, which was fantastic. And he was so good for New Zealand. So I'm going to jump on Nafahu White as my dynamite player. And I think he's really going to step up this year in that Roosters forward pack and absolutely come of age. That is it for our Sydney Roosters preview. But I'd just like to thank Doug for jumping on. Of course, before you all go, don't forget to check out our sponsors, JerseyKingz Australia. Go to jerseykingzaustralia.com. It's where I got this awesome 1997 Roosters retro jersey. Looks fantastic. Of course, there are plenty of jerseys there, NRL, AFL, soccer, and basketball as well. And if you use the code RUCK, you get $50 off. I mean, that's an absolute bargain if you ask me. They're selling jerseys for $150. Use your code RUCK, you'll get jerseys for $100.
Mate, that's a steal.
An absolute steal, mate, but don't steal. JerseyKingzAustralia.com. Check them out now. Also on Instagram as well. And of course, check out our sponsors at Stay Fancy Eyewear, the best safety glasses going around. They make you look good, and you can also wear them on the job site as well to protect your eyes. Fantastic there. If you use the code RUCK10, you'll get 10% off. So check out Stay Fancy Eyewear on Facebook and Instagram. But until next time, that's Doug. I'm Joey. Be good.